Hey guys, my name is Sonny. I do Velvet Film and More, which is a blog online about film and more. But one of my favorite movie genres and everything connected to it is horror. And the thing is, if I write everything and say everything I want to do about horror on Velvet, it kind of loses the and more and becomes Velvet Horror anyway. So I thought, why not do both, where I can ramble on one about the upcoming films and old soppy films and cult films and whatnot, and then have my own little place where I can just unleash all my horror stuff. So that's what I'm doing. My camera has screwed up at the moment, so I'm using the webcam on my laptop, and I know when I move it looks a bit strange, like when vampires and stuff in old vampire films when they move really fast. So I'm gonna try and keep my hands out of shot as much as possible because they're overly expressive. I wanted to think of a first video for this, and there were so many rambles and reviews and stuff I wanted to talk about, and I didn't know how to kind of introduce me doing this now. And watching some of my other horror YouTube people that I like, I'm not sure why they're mine, they are now apparently, but there's a horror question tag where it's 10 questions about your interest in horror, so I thought I'd start with that. So if you're a bit bored already, you can go, it's fine. Or if you want to know what my favourite horror stuff is, stay tuned, because that's what I'm gonna do. The first question is, what is the first horror movie you remember watching? Now, when I was younger, I would get out of bed and catch parents and stuff watching snippets that always stuck in my head, but the first horror film that I ever watched from beginning to end was the American remake of The Ring. And at that age, it terrified me, and I watched it with a young friend, and we had a sleepover the same night, and they liked to freak me out by saying words like Samara. And at that age, I was freaking terrified. Like, I have this thing about really creepy faces, and they're distorted. It ruined me. The second question is, what is your favourite horror film? Now, as a film buff who spends all her time rather watching films, recommending films, or writing about films online, it's very hard to pinpoint one. So I guess if I kind of had to at least pick a couple, it'd be House of a Thousand Corpses, because I'm a big Rob Zombie fan, and the general first three of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres, because I'm a big Leatherface fan. Yes, that was really strange. Can you... Ooh. Oh, it looks like I've got more fingers than... Next question is, what is your favourite horror genre? Now, again, being a film buff, it's difficult. It all depends on what mood I'm in, because I love the tacky horrors, I guess you call them, like the classics, especially in the 80s, like you had Texas Chainsaw 2, and it's like, I don't know, I suppose some cheesy. I'm a big fan of slashers. Slashers are like the ultimate classics. Vampire horrors, I'm a big fan of, like the genuinely good vampire horrors. Like, they are out there, it's just people have forgotten they exist. The next question is, what genre scares you the most? Again, it depends how you do it in the film. It's some slashers I'll be like, oh shit, like I've got a thing about ankles, and like in the first Hostel there was a thing with ankles. Ooh. What scares me the most is very difficult to pick a genre, because I've been scared by different horror films of different genres, like some psychological, some 80s slashes. It depends how it's done and what is the kind of thing in the film that is scaring you, like somebody's face and whatnot. I love horror films that kind of don't really show you what's going for people or what's supposed to be scary. You have to use a lot of your imagination, and your imagination makes it 10 times more creepy than it is. And I tend to be more scared by horror films that I watch in the cinema and it's because it's all like loud and there's like no escape. But if I watch it at home, I'm slightly less scared. Unless I'm with my friends and they're all freaking out. If other people are freaking out, then I'll start freaking out. The last horror that scared me, which is the next question, genuinely, like, put me on edge, was the Babadook. Like, I can't even. The next question is, who is your ultimate scream queen? Now, this question I actually struggle with because I love psychopathic characters and a lot of the scary and villainous characters in films that I tend not to pay attention to the scream queens. Like, they're all fantastic. Like, but I couldn't pick one because I'm too busy looking at Leatherface or waiting for, like, Freddy to turn up. Like, it's so difficult to, like, it's like, oh, it's very, very much for me, it's like, oh, she's gonna die. How is he gonna do it? Which sounds quite twisted, but I'm, a lot of you are gonna be like, how can you be a horror fan and not have a scream queen? But at this point in time, I don't. If I ever do, I'll let you know. A concept you'd like to see in horror. Now, this is, like, a very interesting question because as a writer and whatnot, I love it when things are kind of original, and I know originality story-wise is quite hard in a horror film, and it's like I love, like, philosophy and psychology, so the psychological thrillers are, like, probably going back to the earlier question, I think a psychological horror is my favourite genre, because it really, really fucks with you. I'm trying to think. It's very hard to think off the top of my head. I probably should have scripted this or planned it, but as you can see, I'm wearing a scarf indoors. That's how unplanned I am for this video. Your fave scream kill. Now, for many a year, it was Paris Hilton's death in House of Wax. Because it was Paris Hilton. Just get some pole through her head. It's like, haha. My favourite on-screen kill now. There was a lot of good ones in the remake of Evil Dead. Like, they were really gruesome. But like, oh, and it's like, I've gone completely blank. The dude in the remake of Evil Dead, what was his name? I know he played St. Jimmy in the Green Day video, Jesus Suburbia, but he, like, died, and then almost died, and then almost died again, and by the end of the film I was like, just die! And then he died. Then he came back. Favorite horror franchise? My main three has to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Chucky series, like, I love Chucky, and Scream. I am a sucker for Scream, like Billy Loomis. Like 1, 2, and 4 was pretty good. 3 is just like, okay, get to see Sydney in a slightly different environment, but not quite 2 or 1 or even 4. And the last question is your favourite horror director. I cannot pick one, so it's Wes Craven and John Carpenter, which are kind of the obvious ones, and I know they're like the classic, like, oh, everyone loves them, and I wish I could be really cool and give you independent people. But you cannot deny Wes Craven and John Carpenter, because they are geniuses. But yes, there is nothing else to say. There are no more questions. The questions are done. My rambling is over. I hope you enjoyed learning nonsense about me and me looking strangely into my camera, or as if you're an actual person. But if you're watching this now, then you are an actual person. So well done you for being an actual person. I'm going to go before I say anything else. Goodbye.